Welcome to our continued study of stewardship using the Stewardship Basics Bible Study found on the LCMS website under Stewardship. We continue with Lesson 4, and we're going to do questions 6, 7, and 8. The first question is all about what we find in Galatians chapter 4, verses 1 through 7, and that reads, I mean that the heirs, as long as he is a child, is no different from a slave, though he is the owner of everything, but he is under guardians and managers until the date set by his father. In the same way, we also, when we were children, were enslaved to the elementary principles of the world. But when the faithfulness of time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, so that they might receive adoption as sons. And because you are sons, God has sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father. So you are no longer a slave, but a son. And if a son, then an heir through God. So that will be the basis for our first question. And that first question is, what did the work of the Son accomplish for fallen stewards? And again, we are the fallen stewards, obviously. And what has God done for us? In their fallen state, the stewards continue the labor of Genesis, chapter 1 and 2, with all the burdens. And remember, God cursed the ground that he would bring forth thistles and thorns and all the weeds, and we would eat by the sweat of our brow. This burden takes place in time. They were enslaved to this stewardship. They were not free to do anything but be under this burden in time until the point of death. And it really means that we are to work. We're to work creation, the ground, and everything. And now we have this as a burden. We no longer have the joys of serving God with a delightful heart, with a perfect creation. We now deal with a fallen creation, with the fallen stewards. And so what did God do? And that is what we get to see. He sends his Son to accomplish something for us, which flows right into the next question. In what way does Paul speak of this redemption as restoration for the steward? And we hear this, that we have the adoption of sons. We're no longer slaves. And so there is a fundamental change that we should realize and see and act in. So the answer to that question, the redemption is couched by Paul in the language of family, which is very interesting. The first stewardship was carried out in the realm of family. Husband and wife were fruitful and multiplied as they were working and keeping the garden. When the redemption authored by Jesus comes into the fullness of time, the fallen steward is restored to his or her original state of stewardship, of being the good steward that is actually part of the family. And I like that because that's God's family, that's God's promise, God's work, God's ability to keep us in together as who he says we are. The forgiven saints, the sons, the adopted sons, who are no longer stuck under this burden. So really amazing things. So the next question, and this will deal with St. John chapter 3, verses 16 through 18. But the question is, how do these familiar words help us to understand God's feelings towards fallen stewards? And so again, just to remind you of John 3:16 through 18. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him. Whoever believes in him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the only Son of God. And again, the question, how do these familiar words help us to understand God's feeling towards fallen stewards? At no point did the Creator ever cease to love his creation. It's a huge statement, including fallen stewards like the man and the woman, even when they were still in the fallen state. The love of the Creator was there for those who were originally created to be stewards of his perfect creation. This love is not just for man, but for the entire creation that was once called very good. In Jesus, that same cursed creation becomes what it was made to be, restored, loved, and we get the promise of the fullness of this to come in the resurrection, which we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but it is exciting to talk about being the result and continuing in the fallenness of our stewardship and the ability to be good stewards. We get to know that we have the promise of God, which doesn't take away our responsibilities. It doesn't take away what we're supposed to do. We're still supposed to serve God and the neighbor. We're to be good stewards of creation, our families, our friendships, the people in our lives. And it just means that we get to do this in faith and love, not in the burdensome of God's command and fear of wrath. So if you have any questions about these questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I hope this is beneficial to you, and God's peace and blessings be upon you.